Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video 187, Superstitions about Animals. This is an interesting work actually. It's roughly a counterpart, it's very similar to Flower Lore, which you can also get. Link in the description to this work on Amazon in the description there. Second and third links are to my books, blogs, Blogspot, and WordPress. Again, Flower Lore, interesting. I think that's under the folklore header. There are other works there as well. It's similar. A lot of folkloric works are very dry and academic, you know, a million footnotes, and that's basically it. No, trust me, I've got works that I technically have to release at some point. I'm like, I can't figure out the footnote function on ODT, so I'm going to have to put it in parentheses at some point. It's going to be difficult. I'll have to work through it. It just takes me twice as long, which is somewhat annoying, especially when it spans multiple pages. There's so many footnotes, it's like 3 pages of footnotes. Just like put it in the text itself. Structure it into the text and just as an aside or something. Why do you people love that? It's for show, really, the footnotes. It's to make it look academic, even if it doesn't need to be in footnotes. This particular work combines poetry and biblical prose especially, but other prose as well, into the folklore that it speaks of, and it's about animals. A lot of it's avian, about like the house wren, the crow, the raven stuff. It has ill omens, good omens, you know, sort of stuff, you know, that's spiritually important in various ways. It also has some cryptozoology in it. It speaks of the cockatrice, it speaks of the basilisk, sea serpents, which are only technically cryptozoological in nature, of course. There are sea snakes. There are also very large things in the ocean that could be taken as serpents. You got a bunch of drunken pirates in the mid-1800s out at sea in their Ironsides or whatever. And they're going through the water and they see a blue whale that's 110 feet long, or they see a giant squid pop its tentacles out of the water. Yeah, they might construe the tentacles of a dead squid as a serpent and worry that their vessel will be hazarded, because, you know, what was the average length of a seagoing vessel back then? 60 or 70 feet, actually. So not as big as some people think. Have you ever been on the Mayflower, like you know, the reproduction of it? It's like the Plymouth colony or something. I went to those museums, rather fascinating. But a lot of this is poetry from and Shakespearean verse. There are a lot of Shakespeare references here, which is why it's like Flower Lore. And I like the poetry, I like the Shakespearean inclusions, because it breaks the work up and makes it less dry, and specifically just, well, this culture believes this about this animal. I'm going to give you 5 pages of minutia about that. No, it illustrates it a little bit more. And in some cases, it says things literally from a skeptical perspective. For instance, the idea that bees could tell the weather and stuff like that, or knew when a person had died, and so apparently Old English families used to take little black pieces of cloth and drape it over the beehives, you know, when someone had died, to let the bees know that it's a funeral and stuff. And it was very funny, but then the author does make some other asides confirming some of these rumors. For instance, yes, indeed, an ostrich will eat bits of metal. An ostrich does eat rocks. Now, we now know, of course, its stomach doesn't dissolve metal, but it will eat it. In fact, it'll eat any small object tossed to it pretty much indiscriminately. So if you heat up scissors to red hot, like the ancient Arabic scholars did in one experiment, throw it to the ostrich, it'll eat it. It'll then die. It'll cut its own throat with the red hot scissors, but it will eat it. It will attempt to, much to its own dismay. Or the fact that bees, if hives die off, then the farmer can expect to sell the farm. Folklore. Technically true, because the bees tend only to die off in significant numbers if there's a prolonged drought, or the weather's really like chilly and damp or something, they get disease in them. And so yeah, your crops will probably fail. You're probably fucked. So yeah, it's an interesting piece of work, definitely like Flower Lore. If you've got a copy of that and liked it, you'll like this one. Very similar length. It's like 170 pages or something, I think. So it's fairly full length. In fact, it might be 190, actually, come to think of it. So I recommend it. I like folklore, especially biological folklore, plants and animals especially. I'm more on the plant side, because I like herbal sort of medicine, folk medicine stuff. But some of that has animal inclusions too, like the idea of bezoar. Now, of course, we know it does actually have technically a medicinal action, or the use of charcoal, certainly in medicine, goes along with the bezoar for the same reasons. Then this one talks about unicorn horns, which are actually, depending on the source, it could have been an elephant tusk, a rhinoceros horn, certain teeth. Could have been a fossil tooth, technically speaking, or narwhal horn. That was the big one. Of course, the Scandinavians, the Vikings, when they came over to fish and stuff, they saw the narwhals, and if they netted one or two of them, they could become rich as kings for the rest of their lives. So, yeah, they definitely hunted them into threatened status fairly early on. So again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books, blogs. If you like the folkloric side of things, I've got you covered. That's about all. Peace out.